How do you guys feel about the question, is fear bad?
The fear of imperfection, I think, is the most hindering fear that we have nowadays.
Yeah, it's kind of a double-edged sword.
So I feel like fear can help push you to do what is right.
There is always a tomorrow in every single day.
And sometimes you're afraid of not doing too well. There's also the potential of you doing really, really well.
And even if you do horribly, the sun will still rise tomorrow, and there's still a savior and an atonement, and everything will work out fine.
I am Porter, the host of Striving Higher to Inspire, and today we'll be talking about being afraid and how it can stop you or it can help you with your achievements. And around our computer control table, that's totally a word that I totally did not make up on the spot, we have Xander, Daniel, David, Maylee, Peter, Shay, Emery, and Sammy. Let's go into the episode.
How do you guys feel about the question, is fear bad?
In and of itself, it's not bad if you don't let it limit you. Fear is supposed to induce caution. It's supposed to make us more careful. And our reactions of adrenaline are supposed to help protect us. But if we let it limit us, then it starts to become a problem because then it limits our freedom.
I think that is very true. Because if we had no fear, what would stop us from jumping off a cliff?
Exactly.
I've heard of people that I don't know if it's this lady who had brain damage or some incident. Anyway, she couldn't actually feel fear, and so in one sense, one could say it aided her because she like there's nothing that she wasn't afraid to do, but she uh, couldn't people very well because she had no fear of saying something really offensive to her friends or losing her friends or anything like that. So it was kind of a lonely existence, I want to say, but she had no fear of that. So I guess it has its uh purposes and gives and takes. Honestly, though, like the fear of imperfection, I think, is the most hindering fear that we have nowadays because that's what makes it so hard to do all kinds of things. And it's not like I'm not running for my life from a jaguar. I'm sitting in front of a bunch of friends going, "Holy crap, I'm so afraid of giving this speech or whatever it is." And that's the most hindering fear I think that we have.
Yeah, um, sometimes we need our fear, and sometimes fear can be a very annoying thing. Like
Yeah.
being chased by a mountain lion, we need our fear. Although giving a speech, we don't need that fear.
Yeah. God gave us judgment. Like in the Book of Mormon, it says God gave us judgment so that we can like judge between good and evil for ourselves and see which one we would serve.
Yeah, I think the biggest problem for me comes in with the fact that I am really afraid to be bad at things to the point where, like, if I'm bad at something, I never want to do it because I don't like being bad at things. But you, like, legitimately cannot be good at something if you aren't bad first.
I mean, I'm
Yeah.
actually reading a book right now, and the main character's brother's whole thing is that he's afraid that he's gonna fail because he's so good at everything. And so I just think that it's interesting if you're so good at stuff, you sometimes are afraid that you'll fail when you need to succeed the most.
Yeah, it's kind of a double-edged sword, kind of like how acting or like getting a lead role in the ballet, if I get a lead role and then I fail, then it's no longer good ballet. Like I may have been I how do I phrase this? How do I use that fear of imperfection, I guess, to make myself do better, but not can't think of the word. but not but don't not do it.
My mom showed me this quote by Winston Churchill yesterday or the day before that says, "Success is not final, failure is not fatal. It is the courage to continue that counts." And it really stuck out to me because something that's kind of a deep held belief of mine is that it doesn't matter that I'm not perfect today because I can keep continuing, and it's something that one day, not in this life, but I'll be able to reach.
Yeah, well, the fear of failure, I mean, that's one of the worst fears, probably. Like, it's, I feel like everybody's afraid of failure. And the thing is, I think that Satan uses that fear. Like, he wants you to be afraid of failing so you can't succeed because failing it brings you to like new heights. It helps you grow, like in um like a ton of famous people, like if you look in their life story, it's like this a bunch of failures. It's just them like failing at this and then continuing to um persevere. I think that perseverance is like one of the best skills for becoming great.
Yeah, I mean, with fear, you gotta be like, I I want to beat someone, but in order to get there, I will have to expect to be beaten just as bad as I will beat someone, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, I think that fear is a good thing and a bad thing, because fear could push you to do better, push you, like for the ballet example, it could push you to be better at ballet. But it could also, during the performance, you could get that wave of fear and then you just can't, and you just forget about everything. And so I feel like fear can help push you to do what is right, but it can also stop you with the same effect.
I think fear was designed to be very constructive because it provides the structure, because if you're afraid, it means you care about doing good about that thing. And I don't think fear necessarily is the problem. I mean, maybe. I think it's processing of fear the problem, because that's become way more of an issue recently with like anxiety, things like that. Processing fear that we're just not sure how to do, that then becomes the issue, and that's what makes it constrictive.
Very true.
And the thing and overcoming fears, that's a really, like when you overcome something like a big fear, it does make you feel really excited and happy. Like like when you like give a talk. I mean, I know that I'm kind of not so like, I don't really like getting up in front of people, but like when I accomplish it, then it just is so amazing.
A follow-up question could be, how do you manage fear then? How do you use it constructively instead of destructively?
Well, I feel like fear, similar to anger, as long as you bridle that, it can be used to help, because anger is a very holy part of us. Being being angry at someone's being angry because at someone, as long as you don't let that control you, it's not bad. And just like anger, fear, so long as you don't let it control you, you can use that to your advantage.
Yeah, I feel like the way I manage fear probably would not work for most people because I'm very practical and logical and not like out in the future. So if I'm afraid of something, I've gotten to the point where like I play piano and a lot of times before my recitals, I'll be like deathly afraid and then I'll go, well, what does being afraid do for me? And you can like list off the options or the benefits. And if unless I find any, I'm always like, well, I don't care. And I know that sounds really easy to do, but it's really hard and it takes some practice, but it's really helped me a lot.
There is always a tomorrow in every single day. You fail today so you can succeed to tomorrow, or even like the next month, week, or even year. You fail right now, so then you have higher potential. You fail and reach lower depths, so you can reach higher heights, like a tree growing its roots down through the soil, so then it can reach higher up towards the sky and get more sunlight.
One thing that I've talked about with someone who we discussed this quite a bit, and she said what really helps her is to just go through what are facts and opinions. Like if I were to take the piano recital thing, I would think, okay, a fact, I am here. A fact, I'm going to play the piano. An opinion, I'm going to mess up. That kind of thing, where you just go through and you sort out what are the facts and what are the opinions, and then how can I change those?
And sometimes you're afraid of not doing too well, but there's also the potential of you doing really, really well. So the worst that can happen is that you completely fail, which is not entirely likely, or which is not likely. And the best that can happen is you perform flawlessly and it's amazing, which it's in between the two of those most times. But really, sometimes the best that can happen outweighs the worst that can happen.
And even if you do horribly, the sun will still rise tomorrow, and there's still a savior and an atonement, and everything will work out fine.
As someone said to me, worst case, you fail miserably and everybody forgets within a month or two.
Exactly.
Or 5 minutes.
And sometimes you do the best case and then people remember it for years.
There are some worst cases when it would be more detrimental than that.
For instance, accidentally launching all the nukes.
Okay, all of the worst cases that I can think of are like the worst speech ever that we watch every year just to make fun of sometimes. But we use that as a learning experience. So really, it's still valuable.
Another thing I've learned is to get over my fear of failing. Oh my gosh, my fear of failing. I just have to fail sometimes and be okay with it. Like one time I had to give a presentation on a biography and I couldn't find my paper that I wrote down my notes on. So I went up and I winged it and it was not good at all. But afterwards, I was just happy that I had done it. And even if it wasn't good, I was still okay that I had just not done great because I could do better next time.
So just for those who are wondering, the worst speech ever video that we were talking about is Phil David Davison from Minerva City Councilman is the thing. Yeah, go check it out. He yells a lot and it's funny.
If you think about it, Angie uses that as an example every year to show us what not to do and to help us be better. And I think I heard is that you haven't failed until you've given up. So as long as you mess up, that's okay. Just don't give up because that's giving into failure and fear.
Messing up, that's a short-term thing. Learning something from messing up, that's a long-term thing. Sometimes your failures, your mess-ups, your issues can help you as much as your short-term successes, because in the long run, it's a learning opportunity.
One of my favorite quotes is from Thomas Edison. having failed 1,000 light bulbs, he said, to the press, "I have not failed. I have just found 1,000 ways how to not succeed."
And I guess that leads to another question of mine, which is what makes something a failure? Because if I go and I perform a piano piece and I don't do very well, is that really a failure? Because I still got up there and conquered my fear.
My favorite way to define failure is just something you didn't learn from. If you can do a bad job and still learn something from it, it's still valuable.
Yes, that's true.
I'm a very logical definitions person, so my automatic answer was, what defines failure? And then at that point, it's what your goal is. I thought what your goal is defines your failure. If your goal is, I must do absolutely perfectly or else I fail, you will probably fail. But if your goal is to go and do your best and learn, you will succeed, probably, unless you decide not to learn. Then it's your choice.
Yeah. I feel like it's a very glass half empty, glass half full. Like you could see it as a failure, or you can go and see it as a success. In like you learned a way that you couldn't succeed. You learned like something. So I weightlift, and what you do in weightlifting, you try to push yourself to the max until you can't lift up the bar anymore. So I think that's like you have to push yourself to that limit so you know where your limit is. So then you can try to get up to that level.
I think that I am pretty good at storytelling. I mean, not to toot my own horn, but I know that it came through a lot of failures. A lot of failures. More failures than I wish that would have happened. Yeah. But I know that has helped me a lot in all my storytelling because now I know, oh, I shouldn't do this in a story. Oh, and I should do this because this went well. But I definitely should not do that.
If you never fail once in your life, that means you've stayed so far within your limits that you never pushed yourself, you never grew.
Yeah, it's like a quote from what's his name? Albert Einstein. He was like, if you've never failed, you've never tried.
And bringing it back to fear, because now that we've talked about a lot of how not to let fear rule your life, does anybody have any scenarios where their fear actually helped them?
Oh, yeah. Shakespeare. I was so afraid of messing up my lines. I worked probably more than I should have on my lines. And it helped me a lot in the play and I didn't even get one line wrong. Or I was able to roll off if I got something wrong to make it right.
Another ballet example here. So for boys tend to do a lot of jumping in ballet. Something that I have learned is if I use that fear properly, then I can then use it to literally jump higher. I can use it to put more energy in how I'm dancing, how I'm moving. So that's one way that I have used it in the past.
Okay, so I also work out, and uh, I guess using that fear of like um not getting the weight up, if that makes any sense. Um, I just I'm like, okay, this is gonna be like one time where I'm super fearful to do this. So I just try and put all I have into it for almost every single rep that's like that.
I mean, with like adrenaline, you have like it pushes you so that if you're being chased by a bear, you're afraid, but it pushes you to go forwards. So I feel like it's like it could also push you to go too forwards into, a tree or something. So I think that it does have like a limit, kind of like it has like it can help you, but it can also, if you're not careful, it can run you into the ground.
Life is a very careful balance of almost everything in life.
One thing that I think is interesting is in the American Revolution, we didn't win that many battles. We lost quite a few. Most of the time, more than we won. And what I think is interesting is we still won because we learn from all of our failures.
That's the one thing with people not reading history anymore, is that they're not learning from the failures of the past, so then they can not repeat that.
Yep. Learn from the past so that you may prepare for the future.
If you learn from the past, you won't repeat it. And there are some things that have happened both in my past and in world history past that I most definitely do not want to repeat. It was some things in my life were a good experience, but I do not want to do it again.
In my opinion, if I had a time machine, I would never change anything, because even though problems happened in the past, if I could stop World War II, millions of people would be saved, but we wouldn't have those heroes that we look up to, like Henry Goddard Hubener, or any other of those amazing heroes that saved the day, that sacrificed themselves. And we would not learn what they did for us, and truly the strength of courage.
We
There's
are
also-
truly a blessed generation.
There's also the fact that how long would it last? Because, humans made that mistake of starting the war and like all that, not talking with like the governments and all that. How long would it last? Like, even if you did stop it, wouldn't it just happen later on, and then more people could possibly die because like the technology and the weapons are more deadly in the future? So
Well, I think the one thing that it really comes down to is how stupid the people want to be. So that's speaking very boldly, but like if someone gets angry for like not going to a wedding or something, they'll like basically discommunicate them from their lives if that's what they choose to do.
As someone I know says, no safety precaution can eliminate the stupid factor.
I think in some elements, fear is kind of like wildfires, right? And we talk about how you have to have a wildfire every once in a while. You have to burn stuff down. Otherwise, if you don't do that and you accumulate too many things that need to be burned down, like forests need to be burned down, it's all gonna come up in like huge, uncontrollable flames, and there's nothing you can do about it because you didn't have those small fires that were constructive. And yes, they hurt. Yes, it sucks to fail, but throughout personal lives, throughout history, if you don't fail, you don't have those occasional wildfires, then it builds up.
Yeah, like originally they tried to just stop all wildfires, period. But what they forgot is that the Earth has been around for a long time, and never once has there been a wildfire that consumed the world.
There are pine trees that literally they can only grow if you burn them down. Sometimes we have things where we can only grow when we are torn apart and broken down into ash, basically.
Yeah, I feel like hopefully this makes sense with the current topic, but jumping back to what Alexander said about Shakespeare, sometimes our fear is necessary so we don't repeat past mistakes or so we don't like make oversights. Like he was afraid of messing up, so he put a lot of effort into it. And we can be afraid of contention on the world, and then we can work to not let that happen. So sometimes fear can be a good driving force for us and one that we need.
I think I agree. And honestly, like I'll bring this back to my very first Shakespeare play. People mention it sometimes where I had this moment and I had to improv and it worked really well. The thing was, I had actually been afraid of that exact thing happening before the play. So I was like, whoa. And I actually thought about before, like, if that happened, what kind of stuff would I come up with? So I had a little bit to go off of. But if we brought in like Jackrabbit factor, there's the possibility that I created that existence because I was so afraid of it. Because I I didn't want that to happen so much that I brought that into my life. So I think the problem is not being okay with failure, like being afraid of failure. It's when you're okay with messing up that you step up to perform your piano piece or you go up to do Shakespeare and you do it well, is because you're okay knowing, okay, there's a chance I can mess up, but I worked hard at this and I'm ready. I'm okay if I don't do a good job because I did my best.
Sometimes I'll even like say a quick humble prayer, be like, Lord, can you just like help me a little bit, like guide my hands, guide my voice, and help me to convey the message that you want for me to convey today.
So I think what I've really learned from this in total is that fear is a good thing when it drives you to do something, when it drives you to be better, but fear is a bad thing when it drives you to not do something and to stay the way you are, to hold yourself back.
Well, yes, and I also feel like no. Because sometimes as humans we tend to overcorrect. We go, oh, this could happen, and then we overdo it. Or, oh, back in history, this happened, and then we overdo it to cause a bigger problem.
That's a good point, and I agree. But what I mean, especially, is like if you're afraid of drowning and you take precautions, that's a good thing. But if you're afraid of drowning and you don't swim because you don't want to drown, I feel like that's where you're being held back. But I do agree with your point. It's a really fine line that we have to walk.
Okay, so the thing that I'm trying to think of what I've learned. I think that it's I think that what I learned is like not be afraid. Don't be afraid of failure. Do things that you might fail at. I mean, and know the possibility of failing and to prepare beforehand so that you can, maybe improv it.
I learned that failure too often is considered a bad thing. And sometimes we need to switch things around and think some bad aspects and then think of what's good about them rather than just being, yes, that is a bad thing and I just don't want to have that ever.
It's important to not let your fear prevent you from pushing your boundaries and progressing. It's important to not, while fear can help you know when there's something to be cautious about and help you be aware when you need to be cautious, you also can't let it limit you growing, you learning. You should not let it stop you from testing your limits.
So I just barely came up with an analogy. Fear is a coin. There are two sides of the coin. Those two sides of the coin are how you decide to do what you decide to do with fear. You can either let it control you, limit you, and stop you, or you can let it help you progress to come further and to improve yourself and practice more and get better. Just depends on how you see it, take it, and use it.
Yeah, I feel like what I've really learned is fear is a really complex emotion with the power to influence us for good and for worse. But really, fear of imperfection is like fear of being a human. It's completely pointless and ridiculous, and it isn't something that any of us should feel because it's okay to be imperfect. That's how we were made to be, and that's fine.
I think that it is, from what I've learned about fear, is it's really just a fine line there. I like having rules. I like white, black, but fear creates a lot of gray area. And life just creates a lot of gray area. There's not always right, wrong, good, bad. So I think that while as unhelpful as this is, fear can be good and it can be bad. It just depends on how you use that fear. If you're using it to build you up or to tear you down.
I think what I have learned is fear signifies that you really care about something. If you're afraid of not doing well, it means you care about doing well. And to me, that should be more of a reason to do it and not less of a reason to do it. Fear shouldn't be an excuse as much as it should be a reason to not only overcome it, but exceed in whatever it is. Like if you're afraid of a piano performance, it's reason to like it just means that you care a lot about doing well in that area.
What I learned is it's really just that I kind of had a hard time with this discussion because fear for me is a lot different. Like, I just get adrenaline and it affects me so much. But fear for me is, like Shay said, when I know I care. And when I know I failed is when I have chosen not to learn. Probably the quote that's come to my mind most during this whole discussion was something Daniel said a while ago, is that you can't quit because you never learned how to. And that quitting is something I've given myself, and it's something that I can overcome. It's just something that I have to put my mind to, and it's not easy. But I liked when Shay brought the Jackrabbit factor in, is that I've created it for myself. The more I think about how afraid I am, the more I've the more I have to fear.
I like how you said that, Emery. That was really good. What I learned from what we talked about is that even though fear could be good or bad, we can't let it fully take control of us, because having too much of one emotion could really hurt us and others. And the fear of failure is more of the fear of giving up than the fear of messing up, because if we give up, then that's the ultimate failure. We just have to keep going because God sent us here to make mistakes, to mess up. But I guess we can never fail until we choose to.
I am Porter, your host, and a expert at failing.
I'm Alexander. Read some history.
I'm Daniel. I don't know what to say right now.
I'm David, and I had an analogy.
I'm Maylee, and I can't unmute my computer, apparently.
I am Peter, and don't let fear stop you.
I am Shay, and I could be better at failing.
I'm Emery, and I've already let fear stop me too many times to go to do it again.
I'm Sammy, and my nieces and nephews got here. I gotta go. Sorry, guys.